Hey guys, and welcome back to Joe Koyo. If you got this far, congratulations. I couldn't hear my own voice this many times, but here you are. You're a faithful listener, and I appreciate it. And we're going to keep on going this week into the towns and communities that make up Johnston. And last episode, we were looking at the twin towns of Benson and Kenly, born on the exact same day for the exact same reason, but had pretty different results, I'd say. And today we're going into something else, another town, as a matter of fact, because we got a few more to go through. We've talked Smithfield. We know how Smithfield came to be, and we've talked about Selma as well. But there's some other towns too, in case you don't know, that do not exist on I-40 or on I-95. And these are the communities that look probably more like what Johnston's towns were going to look like if they had been for the highways. And today we're going to look at this community that, well, I'm just going to start this way. If you have ever heard of turpentine, or if you haven't, and you don't quite know what it is, I have a point to this. Pine trees are like the South's wooden weeds, so to speak. What I mean by that is, like weeds, pine trees don't really need that much to make it. You know, very hardy and very resistant to a lot of diseases and lots of bugs that feast on other bugs. Now, they get bugs, but they tend to survive not because they're so hardy, but because they reproduce so well. And one of the reasons that the Sandhills is full of pine trees is, because they grow. Southern Pines, Pinehurst. Look, those places, those two communities are in a place called the Sand Hills. Y'all, Sand Hills brings to mind like sand dunes, and they're not sand dunes, but they ain't that far from it. The sand hills they were called that because there had to be hills of sand, and pine trees love it. So, therefore, Southern Pines and Pinehurst. You may have noticed that again, pine trees are exceptionally fast growers. Comparable to other trees, there are other trees that grow pretty fast, but pines, they don't really need your help that much. You may also have noticed that Johnston is full of pine trees. So here's something neat. Johnston County, and I heard this years ago, and it fascinated me. Johnston County, like a few other counties nearby, but Johnston in particular is known to environmental scientists as one of the best places to see something called old field plant succession. It's an actual term, old field plant succession. Now here are the basics. Johnston County, if you've been on the podcast, grew lots and lots of tobacco, like a lot of other counties. And there are a number of reasons why it grew so much, that we grew so much here compared to other southern counties. But again, we've talked about it. We'll talk about it again some other time. Now, anyone who has ever farmed or planted a garden or gardens for multiple years knows that plants take nutrients from the soil. They have to eat too. In other words, in order for you to be able to eat corn has to eat first, and corn is an especially hungry crop, no doubt about that. If one plants corn on a plot of land, the corn will take the nutrients out of the soil that it needs to survive. If you plant more corn in the same spot year after year without giving the land time to rest, there will be no food left for anything to grow. Your land will turn into, and we saw this event happen on a very large scale in the 20s and 30s, a dust bowl, eventually. Grains were grown in the Midwest on such a large scale and so often with very little to any replenishment that the land eventually just gave out. And then you also had, when you would have then weather events, this combined with weather events is what causes soil erosion. Now, soil erosion, believe it or not, most people began to be alarmed by what they were seeing during this Dust Bowl, by what they saw as decreasing returns from farms, especially again in the Midwestern prairies. But many just blamed it on bad years. Like there's a storyteller, two of them from the time period. You may remember like Woody Guthrie being a folk singer from the time period. There are some There's some storytellers like Russell Lord and Vance Johnson in Texas, just using two people, but they wrote something down. Russell Lord, again, storyteller, sort of journalist, had written down that he was like most people he knew. They were erosion deniers. Man, that sounds familiar. Until a guy named Hugh Bennett, who's a soil scientist from Anson County, North Carolina, showed him the indisputable truth of soil erosion. Soil erosion is a loss and more and more nutrients being lost. Bennett figured out ways to replenish the soil based on science that kept the plains from turning into another Sahara. It was going to happen. Repeated grain farming nearly permanently killed the soil in the Midwest, and history would have been a very different place had it not been for this guy from North Carolina. Now, as hungry as corn is, tobacco is absolutely ravenous and will completely devour the nutrients in soil until there's absolutely nothing left. It's a weed. Indeed, farmers will notice that tobacco fields year after year will begin to see their tobacco yield less and less fairly quickly. Tobacco's not too particular either. It will leave nothing for other crops. It'll eat it all. So to counteract this, farmers in the South, from the beginning, would try to purchase as much land. I mean, we're talking the 1800s. They would try to purchase as much land as they could afford. If you think about these massive plantations that were in our history books and in movies like Gone with the Wind, they didn't farm all of that. Who can even keep up all that stuff without modern machinery? So they would purchase as much land as they could possibly afford. And again, not to farm it all at once, but to farm a patch of land until it could do no more. Then they would abandon it for a few years and then build back up, clear cut some, new forests, plant tobacco there, and then repeat the process all over again. So basically what you're doing is that you're farming land till it can't hold anymore, clear cutting it, and do it again on another patch of land and just rotate. The hope is that by the time you came back around to that original plot, it's gone fallow long enough that some of the soil has been replenished. It's a very primitive process, but it's also one of the reasons why the plantations of the Old South were enormous. So when land is left alone like that, if there are any nutrients left, weeds will begin to colonize what's left. And then they'll grow, and then they'll die, and they'll decompose, forming new soil eventually. And then trees will also eventually come back. But trees that come back won't really require a lot. Like, for example, the very first trees you'll see are like sassafras and wild cherry. And then the first real tree that will come up, not like these little like itty-bitty things, but the first real tree that will come up is pine. And the more abandoned tobacco fields, the more pine trees. Johnston's economy was so dominated by tobacco for over a century that even some of our non-tobacco products were labeled bright leaf after the tobacco. I mean, it dominated everything. These days, tobacco production has fallen off so much that if we didn't have so many subdivisions and houses getting built, we would be a worldwide leader of pine production, no doubt about it. Some land is just naturally, on the other hand, not conducive to agriculture, regardless of human activity. There's some land that just can't do it, and you can't farm tobacco or anything. Which is why you see the Sandhills region so full of pine trees. Again, Southern Pines Pinehurst, but leave it to resourceful farmers to turn those trees into something useful, like tar and pitch for wooden boats and turpentine. Now, if you take these pine trees and you bleed them of their sap and distill the sap, much like you would moonshine, if you're not familiar with that process, a couple of old episodes of the Beverly Hillbillies can teach you. What do you do with turpentine? Well, that's what you would get if you distilled that pine tree sap. What do you do with it? Well, you can use it as solvent, a varnish. You can use it as medicine, and to connect to a previous episode, that's one of the ingredients in Vicks Vapor Rub, which was, of course, born in Selma, not far from Pine Level. Vicks Vapor Rub still uses turpentine as an ingredient. It can also be used as fuel. It's extremely flammable. and it's crazy toxic. I would not recommend trying to eat it or drink it, you know. Now, there's a town in Johnston County that this kind of fits. Not exactly, but it works. There's a town here called Pine Level, North Carolina. It was founded in 1868 by two brothers from Robeson County, which, if you know where Robeson County is, we're starting to see pine trees. They want to set up turpentine distilleries. And Daniel Thomas and William Barry Oliver, in particular, are their names. And here, there was an abundance in this region of Johnston County, an abundance of pines and fairly level land, pretty flat, easy to get to. Unlike in the sand hills, which is, sand and hills, this was sand and flat. And therefore, it also had a bonus. The railroad just happened to come through it. And so as a result, and all that being said, the turpentine business and train depot and the town of Pine Level was born. Because, well, those are your reasons. And it's been great. It's been fantastic. And there's your Pine Level. Neat little story there. There's a whole big story about those Oliver brothers, but didn't want to get into that too far. That I gotta save it for other episodes too. And so there we have Pine Level, y'all. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to get into another town that next time that existed, they didn't. That existed, they didn't. And we'll be doing that in the next few days. So y'all be good, and we out.